Look at the sole of your foot. If you're wearing shoes, just picture it. The arch, the pad beneath your toes, the fixed skin of your heel. That strip of tissue running from your heel to the ball of your foot is doing something to your jaw right now that nobody has explained to you. Press your thumb into the center of that arch. Push firmly, hold it, and while you hold it, swallow once. Feel that? The tightness in your throat shifted. Your jaw moved differently. Most people think their jawline changes because of their face. Skin gets loose, fat pads descend, gravity wins. But the pull that's dragging your jaw into your neck didn't start anywhere near your jaw. It started here, at the bottom of your body, in tissue you've probably never thought about. I've spent the last 11 years working with people whose faces changed in ways that confuse them. Women who wake up one morning and the jawline they had at 45 is gone by 52. Men who notice their neck looks thicker, heavier, like the chin is sinking into the throat. They come in having tried everything they can think of: exercises for the face, treatments for the skin, procedures that tighten the surface. Some of those things help for a while, but the pull comes back. It always comes back, because they're addressing the end of the chain. The pull originates somewhere else entirely, and until you go there, you're mopping water while the faucet runs. Your foot contains a dense sheet of connective tissue called the plantar fascia. You'd know it as the thick band under your arch. That band doesn't end at your heel. It wraps around the back of your ankle, travels up the back of your calf, passes behind your knee, runs through the back of your thigh, climbs through your lower back, continues along your spine, crosses over the back of your skull, and terminates, here's the part that changes everything, at the tissue that controls your jaw's resting position. One continuous line, sole to skull, heel to jaw. There is no interruption. There is no gap where one structure hands off to another. The tissue that supports your arch is the same system that anchors your jawline. Different regions of the same fascial sheet, separated by roughly 160 centimeters of continuous investment. When I first encountered this connection in practice, I dismissed it. A patient came in with jaw tightness, difficulty opening her mouth fully, a sensation that her lower face was being pulled downward. Standard assessment. I looked at her neck, her jaw muscles, her skull base. Everything was tighter than it should have been. But what caught my attention was her feet. She'd been dealing with plantar fasciitis for 3 years. Chronic arch pain, stiffness every morning, a thickness in the sole that never fully resolved. I treated the jaw, it improved. She came back 2 weeks later and the tightness had returned to the same degree. So I tried something different. I worked on her feet first. Specifically, I spent 20 minutes on the fascial tissue of her arch and the connective tissue behind her ankle. Then I reassessed the jaw without touching it. The jaw mobility had changed. The resting position of her mandible had shifted forward, away from her neck by a visible margin. I want to be precise about this. I did not touch her jaw, her neck, or her face. The jaw moved because I released the foot. That was the first time. It was not the last. The pattern repeated with enough consistency over the following 2 years that I stopped considering it unusual. The foot and the jaw are connected through a fascial highway, and what happens at the bottom of that highway determines what happens at the top. Here is the mechanism, and it begins with water. Your fascia, all of it, everywhere in your body, is approximately 70% water by weight. That water isn't decorative, it's structural. The fluid in your fascial tissue is what gives it the ability to slide, to stretch, to absorb force and spring back. Hydrated fascia is pliable, resilient, responsive. When you walk, the tissue in your foot absorbs the ground reaction force of each step, roughly 1.5 times your body weight, and distributes it upward through the chain. Hydrated tissue handles this beautifully. The force enters the sole, travels through well-lubricated fascial layers, and dissipates across the system without creating tension bottlenecks. After 50, something changes. The fascial tissue begins to lose water faster than the body replaces it. Research on connective tissue aging has established that fascial hydration decreases by approximately 15% per decade after the 5th decade of life. 15% doesn't sound dramatic until you understand what it means mechanically. Dehydrated fascia doesn't slide. It grips, it stiffens, it shortens. Think of a leather belt left in the sun. It doesn't just dry out, it contracts. It becomes rigid. It pulls at its attachment points. Your fascial tissue does the same thing. And the place it dehydrates first is the place with the highest mechanical demand and the poorest blood supply, your foot. The feet are the farthest point from your heart. Blood supply to the plantar fascia is already limited compared to the fascia in your thigh or your abdomen. Layer on top of that the fact that your feet absorb more repetitive force than any other structure. An average person takes between 6,000 and 8,000 steps per day, each one loading the plantar tissue, and you have the conditions for early dehydration. The arch stiffens first. The heel pad thins. Morning stiffness becomes the norm, not because something is injured, but because the tissue dried overnight and hasn't rehydrated yet. That stiffness you feel when you step out of bed and your foot protests the first few steps, that's dehydrated fascia being asked to do hydrated fascia's job. When I explain this in my clinic, the question I hear most often is, fine, my foot is stiff, but what does that have to do with my face? Everything. Because the dehydration doesn't stay in the foot, it migrates. Here is something you can try right now, and it takes less than a minute. Sit in a chair with both feet flat on the floor. Take a tennis ball or anything roughly that size and firmness, and place it under the arch of one foot. Press down with moderate pressure and roll the ball slowly from heel to the base of your toes. Do this for 30 seconds. Then stand up. Walk 3 steps. Compare the foot you rolled with the foot you didn't. The rolled foot will feel lighter, more flexible, more connected to the floor. Some people notice the difference travels above the ankle. The calf on that side feels looser. The hip sits differently. That's not imagination. You just forced fluid back in the dehydrated tissue through mechanical compression. And the tissue above it responded immediately because it's the same system. Now multiply that effect across a daily practice. Multiply it across weeks. The connected tissue in your foot rehydrates. The tissue above it, your calf, the back of your knee, your thigh, begins receiving better mechanical transmission. The chain loosens from the bottom up. And eventually, the tension that's been pulling your jaw downward begins to release, because the anchor point at the bottom of the chain is no longer dragging everything tight. I mentioned I've been working with this for 11 years. There's a part of this story I haven't shared. Around year 3, I started noticing the pattern in myself. I'm on my feet for long clinical hours, walking on hard surfaces, and by my late 40s, the arch of my right foot had become noticeably stiffer than the left. Mornings were uncomfortable. I adapted, wore different shoes, stretched the calves, did the standard things. But I started noticing something else. The right side of my jaw was tighter than the left. My neck would pull to the right when I was tired. The skin under my chin on the right side draped differently than the left in photographs. 2 years of self-treatment on my right foot, 10 minutes a day, compression and release work on the plantar tissue, and the asymmetry reduced by a degree that was measurable in photographs and palpable in the jaw joint. My right jaw opened wider, the skin drape evening out gradually, the neck pull diminishing. Let me qualify that, it didn't disappear. It reduced to a degree where I could measure a difference, but not where anyone else would call it dramatic. Partial, specific, and consistent. That's what fascial rehydration looks like in practice. Not a miracle, a slow reversal of a slow process. The mention of a complete system brings up something I should tell you about. What I've shown you here, the foot release, the connection, the principle, is one point on the chain. The full sequence, all 12 connection points from foot to jaw, is what I put into the Connected Face protocol. It's a 30-day plan with labeled diagrams and a tracking sheet so you can see the progression yourself. Link is in the description below if you want it. Right now, let's keep going, because there's a deeper layer to this mechanism that explains why the face specifically shows the effect. Think of your fascial system as a continental highway network. Your foot is the southernmost on-ramp, the entry point where ground force joins the system and begins traveling north. In a well-maintained highway, traffic flows smoothly. Vehicles merge, accelerate, and distribute evenly across lanes. Force enters through the sole, travels through hydrated fascial layers, and disperses without creating congestion. The ride is smooth. The system absorbs what it needs to absorb, distributes what it needs to distribute. In the northern terminus, your jaw, your face, your skull, receives force in gentle, distributed waves that maintain its structural position. When the highway deteriorates, traffic behavior changes. Potholes form at the on-ramp first, the section that handles the most volume with the least maintenance budget. That's your plantar fascia dehydrating. Vehicles slow down, they crowd together, congestion builds. The traffic jam doesn't stay at the on-ramp, it backs up through the entire system. Behind the knee, that's your first major interchange, and it's a bottleneck. Tension accumulates there because the popliteal region is where the calf fascia transitions to the thigh fascia. And when upstream tissue is stiff, the transition point jams. The hip crease is the next interchange, the inguinal fold, where your leg meets your trunk. Another jam. Each bottleneck forces the tissue above it to compensate by pulling tighter, gripping harder, trying to manage force that isn't flowing freely through the system. By the time the highway reaches your neck, traffic is barely moving. The tissue at the base of your skull, the connective tissue sheet that crosses from the back of your head forward to your jaw, is receiving force that should have been distributed smoothly across the entire route. Instead, it arrives compressed, concentrated, and relentless. That tissue contracts, it pulls downward, your jaw follows, your neck thickens. The skin between your chin and your collarbone has no choice but to fold and drape because the underlying scaffold has shifted position. The highway's northern terminus has buckled under mismanaged traffic from the south. Now I want to take you deeper into the mechanism itself, the fascial cascade at the cellular level. When your foot's connective tissue dehydrates, the collagen fibers within it begin to cross-link. In hydrated tissue, collagen fibers slide past each other freely, allowing the tissue to stretch and recoil. When the water between those fibers drops below a critical threshold, the fibers begin sticking to each other. They form adhesions, bonds between fibers that shouldn't be bonded. These adhesions create localized stiffness. The tissue can no longer absorb force through deformation. It transmits force rigidly instead. Every step you take sends a jolt of unabsorbed force straight up the chain. Your calf absorbs some of it by tightening. Your hamstring absorbs more by shortening. Your pelvis tilts forward to compensate. Your lower back rounds. Your upper back follows. Your head drifts forward on your neck. Your jaw drops towards your chest because the entire structural column beneath it has shortened and shifted. This isn't theory. This is measurable. Imaging studies of fascial tissue in subjects over 50 show a consistent pattern. Collagen density increases, water content decreases, and cross-linking between fibers accelerates with each decade. The tissue becomes more like rope and less like silk. Rope is strong, but rigid. Silk is strong and fluid. Your jaw needs silk beneath it to maintain its position. It's getting rope. A marathon runner understands this instinctively, even if they've never heard the word fascia. When a distance runner develops plantar fasciitis, inflammation and dehydration of the foot's connective tissue, their entire kinetic chain collapses within weeks. The calf tightens to compensate for the foot's lost shock absorption. The knee begins tracking differently because the calf is pulling it inward. The hip drops on the affected side. The lower back aches. The opposite shoulder starts hurting. One tissue failure, one chain reaction, one predictable cascade from the ground up. The same biomechanical principle applies to your jaw, just on a longer time scale. The runner's chain collapses in weeks because the training loads are enormous. Your chain collapses over decades because the daily loads are smaller, but the direction is identical, bottom to top, foot to face. And the solution is identical too, address the foundation first. Something happens when I explain this chain to patients in my clinic. Their posture changes. I've seen it hundreds of times now and it still gets to me. They sit up straighter. Their chin lifts. Not because I told them to, because they suddenly understand what's pulling them down. And understanding is itself a form of release. The tension was invisible before because it was everywhere. When you can trace the line, foot, calf, knee, hip, spine, skull, jaw, the tension becomes visible. And visible tension is tension you can address. I need to tell you something about this pattern that doesn't get discussed enough. The number of people experiencing this fascial cascade after 50 is enormous. It is not a rare condition. It is not an unlucky subset of the population. Fascial dehydration is a universal aging process. Every human body past a certain age begins losing water content in its connective tissue. Every single one. The only variables are speed and severity. Some people dehydrate faster. Those with limited movement, poor hydration habits, high stress occupations, or inflammatory diets. Some people dehydrate slower. Those who maintain varied movement patterns and adequate tissue loading. But nobody is exempt. If you're over 50 and you've noticed changes in your jawline, your neck, the drape of skin beneath your chin, you are not imagining things and you are not alone. This is happening to millions of people right now, and the vast majority of them don't know that their feet are involved. They're pressing on their face. They're massaging their jaw. They're considering procedures that address the surface while the deep pull continues from below. The isolation of not understanding why your face changed, that isolation itself is a kind of weight. And knowing that this is a shared mechanical process, not a personal failing, lifts something that isn't physical at all. The guiding principle is simple. And once you understand it, you can apply it to any exercise, any technique, any approach you encounter. The principle is this: rehydrate from below. Always start at the lowest point of the chain and work upward. Never start at the jaw. Never start at the neck. Start at the foot. The reason is mechanical. If you release tension at the top of the chain without releasing the anchor at the bottom, the top will tighten again within days because the bottom is still pulling. You've loosened the rope at one end while the other end remains knotted. The knot pulls everything back. Start at the foot, rehydrate the plantar tissue, and the chain begins releasing itself upward. Each station, calf, knee, thigh, hip, spine, skull, responds to the reduced tension from below. By the time you reach the jaw, there may be very little work left to do because the pull that was dragging it down has already diminished. Here is the foot rehydration technique. Sit on a firm chair. Remove your shoes. Place one foot on a tennis ball or a lacrosse ball, something with enough firmness to create real compression. Position the ball directly under the center of your arch. Press down with the weight of your leg, not body weight, that's too much. Just the leg's weight is sufficient. Hold the compression for 8 seconds, then release for 4 seconds. That's one cycle. Move the ball slightly forward toward the base of your toes and repeat. 8 seconds of compression, 4 seconds of release. Move again, this time toward your heel. Same cycle. 8 on, 4 off. 3 positions along the arch. Center, forward, heel. Total time per foot, approximately 72 seconds. 3 positions, 8-second holds, 4-second releases. Both feet under 3 minutes. Do this once in the morning, immediately after waking, while your feet are at their stiffest and most dehydrated from the overnight fast. The compression forces fluid from surrounding tissue into the fascial matrix. The release allows the tissue to expand and absorb that fluid. Compression and release is the mechanism by which fascia rehydrates. It's a pump. Your cardiovascular system pumps blood. Your fascial system requires mechanical pumping through external compression. Without it, the tissue dries, stiffens, and shortens. With it, the tissue plumps, softens, and lengthens. 3 minutes every morning. After 2 weeks of daily practice, add the second station, behind the knee. Sit with one leg extended on a bed or sofa. Place the ball behind your knee, directly in the soft space at the back of the joint. Same protocol, 8 seconds of compression, 4 seconds of release. 3 positions, center, slightly left, slightly right. The tissue behind your knee is where the calf's fascia transitions to the thigh's fascia, and it is a primary congestion point in the dehydration cascade. Releasing it after the foot amplifies the foot's effect because you're clearing the first bottleneck in the highway. What should you expect? Let me be specific because vague promises help nobody. In the first week, your feet will feel different in the morning. The stiffness that used to take 15 minutes of walking to resolve will begin resolving in 5. That's the earliest sign that the fascial tissue is rehydrating. By week 3, most people notice that their calf tension has decreased without doing any calf-specific work. The foot release is propagating upward. By week 6, and this is where it gets interesting for the jaw, some people begin noticing that their neck mobility improves. They can turn their head further. The base of their skull feels less compressed. The jaw opens with less effort. By week 10 to 12, the jawline changes become visible in photographs. Subtle, not dramatic. The chin separates slightly from the neck. The skin beneath the jaw drapes with less excess. The angle between the jawline and the throat opens by a few degrees. These are real, measurable, photographable changes. They are also slow, partial, and progressive. This is not a before and after transformation that happens overnight. It is a gradual reversal of a gradual process. The tissue dried over decades. It does not rehydrate in days. I want to be honest about something. Fascial rehydration through mechanical work addresses the connective tissue component of jawline change. It does not address bone loss, fat pad descent, or skin elasticity. Those are separate processes with separate mechanisms. What it addresses, specifically and measurably, is the downward pull created by shortened, dehydrated fascial tissue running from your feet, through your body, to your jaw. For many people, that pull is the primary driver of what they see in the mirror. For others, it's one factor among several. My scope here is the fascial component. It's the one most people have never heard of, and it's the one that responds most predictably to self-treatment. Something in me resists wrapping this up neatly. There's a restlessness that comes with understanding a mechanism this clear and knowing that most people will never hear about it. They'll spend money on the surface. They'll chase solutions at the top of the chain while the foundation below continues to dry and shorten and pull. Not because they're foolish, because nobody connected the dots for them. Nobody said, look at your foot. Nobody explained the highway. Nobody told them that the jawline they lost didn't fall off their face. It was pulled down from below by tissue they walk on every day without a second thought. This information isn't designed for everyone who scrolls past it. Some people will hear foot fascia and keep moving, and that's perfectly fine. The mechanism doesn't care about belief. It operates whether you understand it or not. But for those of you who stayed through 48 minutes of fascial anatomy, you understand something different now about the relationship between your feet and your face. You know the highway. You know the dehydration cascade. You know the protocol, bottom to top, compression and release, 3 minutes every morning, starting at the arch. If this channel's approach to fascial anatomy resonates with how you think about your body, not surface fixes, but mechanical understanding, then subscribing means you'll see the next investigation when it arrives. Leave a comment if you've already noticed morning foot stiffness and wondered whether it connects to something higher. It does. Everything connects. That arch you press at the beginning, the sole of your foot that seems so far from your jaw, is where your face begins. And the people who understand that distinction are the ones who stop pressing on the symptom and start treating the source. Your feet carry more than weight.